Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam. Good morning. Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Today is Wednesday, February 28th, 2024, and we are here. It's been a couple of months since we've been with the Coalition for a Resilient and Inclusive Waterfront. We are here for another iteration of Waterfront Wednesdays this year. Actually, it's been 2 years, I want to say, that we've been doing this. Last year, we were with them every month. This year, we're going to be with them every other month on the even months. And so February, April, June, August, October, and December, we will have Waterfront Wednesdays here in the Java Cafe. And so I am excited to get ready to bring my guests in, but they know that I am not going to bring them in until I'm able to do something here in the background that we were sort of joking about in the beginning, but I just need to make one adjustment and we will be all set. All right, there we go. So it is Waterfront Wednesdays and I got the Waterfront blue. I told the team that I would have it set before we got started and we got it. And so I would like to introduce you to our guests that are getting ready to come in just a second. Two of them are no strangers to the Java Cafe. Our first guest this morning is Marcia. Our second guest this morning is Reverend Willie Bodrick, and then also Laila Pearson. They're going to join us and speak with us about their work in both of their areas or entities as members or partners in the Waterfront Coalition. So without further ado, I would like to present to some and introduce to others, Marcia, Reverend Bodrick, and Laila as well. Good morning to all three of you. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
Marcia, how you doing? We got to get you off of mute. Hit the square.
There we go. I took myself from mute. Good morning, everybody. Hello. So glad to be with you. Good morning, James. Hello, Laila, and hello, Willie.
Good morning.
I am glad to have all of you three, all three of you here this morning, and we're going to jump right in because all of you are doing great work. Laila, thanks for reaching out to make this happen, and Ian and crew in the background to talk about the work that's going on. So we're going to talk about the wonderful events that are coming up from the Marcia's group, which is the West Fairmont Hill Community Group. There's a forum on racial equity, and also we're going to talk further about the TAC is the acronym, but TAC is the acronym for the American City Coalition, and we're going to talk about access to green spaces, blue spaces, which is water. And so we're going to jump right in. And so we're going to start with, I believe, Reverend, we're going to start with Marcia, who's first on my screen. If you could just tell us a little bit about the organization, your support, and why you're part of the Waterfront Coalition. And then we'll get some other introductions from Laila and Reverend Bodrick, and then we'll come back and talk about the programming that's coming up.
Sure. Again, I'm glad to be with you. My name is Marcia Kim Jackson, and I live in the Hyde Park section of Boston. And I started when I moved into the community about 25 years ago, the West Fairmount Hill Community Group. It's a neighborhood group that sort of just wants to coalesce the neighborhood. And the quick backstory is I started that group because when I started to look for a home in this community, 40 years ago, 35 years ago, I was told by a realtor on my first offer on buying a home that she could not sell me the home. And these were her words, because the neighbors said that if it was sold to a Black person, they would burn it down. And so that started my crusade to not only have a resistance practice, but a coalition building practice, a community building practice. And so when I moved into the neighborhood, the house was sold to me by another white realtor who insisted that I belonged in this community. That sort of changed the narrative for me. And so the community group really works to bring people together, but it gave birth to the Forum for Racial Equity, which is another group that I headed up and started. And in that group, we do much more pronounced work around racial equity. And it's really in that context that I joined CREW to do the work around equity that they're doing as well.
And very active, Marcia. We see you out in the community, Waterfront Coalition Week last year and whatnot. So glad to see you again and you being a part of it. Laila, please say hello to the audience, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about TAC. We have Reverend Willie here as well, so save him a little bit. Welcome to the Java Cafe, Laila. This is your first time here. You're here with a couple of veterans. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. So my name is Laila Pearson. I'm a Roxbury resident, and I've just completed my first year working at TAC. So I'm the community engagement coordinator. I work primarily on the Waterways Initiative, but as you'll hear and realize as you learn about us, like we are a small and intimate team. So I get to work on all of the initiatives pretty closely as well. And I think that I should leave most of the what is TAC to Willie, but definitely a place-based organization using resident identified everything to drive what we do moving forward. So I'll let him expand on that.
And if for those of you that know Reverend Bodrick, and we are friends, we are brothers, I am going to try I'm just going to say, Reverend, tell us.
Good morning, Jimmy. And thank you very much. It's truly an honor to be here with both Marcia and my colleague Laila. As you know, I've served as president and CEO of the American City Coalition. And we are, as Laila was beginning, we focus on resident and community identified barriers as a focus to address economic development, workforce development, research, and policy. And we've been around for 30 years as an organization. It's our 30th year this year as an organization. And so a lot of our work, which has been throughout our history, been both national, but also very local. And in this iteration of TAC, we've been really focused on our place-based approach, deepening our engagement, particularly in Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, where we are continuing to engage, but making sure that our focus is to create access and opportunity for the residents in our neighborhood, and to ensure that folks are empowered, knowing what rights, what privileges, and what they deserve to have as residents of the Commonwealth. And so that's why this conversation with our waterways programming that we've been doing since 2018, and we've been on the cutting edge around actually talking and engaging around barriers and access to the waterfront, and really catalyzing for Roxbury and Dorchester residents the opportunity to feel and real connection and investment to the waterfront. So we're excited to be here today to talk about this, Jimmy.
Reverend, I'm going to start with you in this go round and ask you, talk about the work being place-based, and the work of CREW, Marcia, Laila, yourself, is part of that is to create and open up spaces and make everyone feel welcome. That place-based work in relation to the Waterfront Coalition. Why is it so important for TAC to be a part of the coalition?
Well, I mean, for us, one, we're in Roxbury. We're in the heart of Roxbury. For us, we don't just see ourselves as being an organization. We see ourselves as a connected partner and stakeholder and community with everybody. Majority of our staff lives in Roxbury, right? Lives in Dorchester. We're not just an organization. We're residents that are working in partnership with community. The other part of that is to make sure that folks actually know what's happening and what's going on. And know that they have a tools and instruments to advocate for themselves, and to advocate for our community. And so for us, making sure that there is an opportunity to give voice to our residents, and to empower them to use their voices, to continue to do the work of education, so that what access, when we're talking about access, we're talking about programming and policies and accessibility in ways that is intentional, and that does not, it's Black History Month, that does not avoid the hard topics that we need to talk about, like race, right? And we can't talk about waterfront waterfront access if we're not going to have an honest conversation of the history to the barriers to that access as it relates to race and racism. And so I think it's a great conversation to have in relations to what's happening in the city of Boston, and how we as a community continue to create more access for our community as we move forward.
Absolutely. Marcia, I'm going to come to you, and Laila, come back to you in just a second. Marcia, Reverend Bodrick talked about the place-based work, and you talked about, you know, your place in Mattapan and what the horrific experience you went through that turned out well. But a lot of that was based on race in a place. When it comes to the work that you've been doing, being a part of the coalition, how does race play a role into this access piece in which Reverend Bodrick referred to?
Yeah, so it's Hyde Park, and I'll say that for me, you know, I've been talking about this issue of why race is so important and talking about who started the conversation around race. And we know who started that conversation, right? The eugenics movement, Lincoln's Rebellion really was at the center of how America became stuck on race. And because they're stuck on race, it now impedes a lot of our work and our access. And so we've got to keep that conversation at the forefront to say that because you have made us absent, separate, not worthy, we're going to push this idea that we're worthy and present. And so for me, we want to center the fact that people who are of difference and people who are proximate to the waterfront, and Hyde Park is a little bit removed, but still proximate. We really need places of healing and recreation, just like anybody else. And so we want to level the playing field, create an equitable conversation around access for our community. So race plays a critical role because they've made the critical piece, but we really want to center that and create a holistic discussion around access, health, around being able to, just as waterfronts are used right now as economic drivers and economic engines, we want to be a part of that. So access and inclusion is really the reason why we see this intersection being so important. Does that answer your question?
It answered it well. And Marcia, we want to see your whole face. If you're on a laptop, pull the top down just a teeny bit.
Oh, like that?
Perfect. We see all of you. Got your little hair down on the side and whatnot. Laila, let me ask you, in your direct work, with working with the community and you overseeing sort of the water access sort of project there, what has been sort of some of the feedback from the community that you've been engaging with in reference to what Reverend Bodrick talked about, Marcia talked about, as far as race and access? What has been sort of the response of the community when you engage with them about, hey, we're doing something, you know, toward the water? I think last year you all had the wonderful event where I believe folks gathered in Roxbury and went to different parts of the waterfront. What's been that engagement level, and how are people responding to your attempt to engage to get them to take advantage of the access that Crew is trying to create?
Yeah, I think
loaded question. I'm sorry for this. Your first time here, but I have a tendency to do that.
That's all good. So I think one thing that's been not surprising is that the reason I say it's surprising is because it's the same that we found in 2018 when we started doing the research. So even though we've made a lot of progress, the challenge is still very consistent. But once we address the barriers that the residents have identified of offer transportation, offer food, have multi-generational programming activities on the waterfront, people are elated to be there. And I think another thing that people are surprised by is how close it feels, because when we're in Roxbury, Dorchester, often our communities do not feel proximate to the water, as Marcia mentioned for Hyde Park. But when you realize it might not be the easiest connection, and that's something we need to work on, but it doesn't take that long to get to the waterfront. Or once you're there, maybe you feel like it was worth that time investment. So I think just showing that once we put in the work to alleviate those barriers and make it easy for people, they want to be there. Why would anybody not want to take advantage of the beautiful blue and green spaces in Boston? And you can see that so many other groups, wealthier, whiter groups, are taking advantage and have that built-in proximity. There's no reason that our communities wouldn't want that same access and the same access to jobs and recreation and health and wellness benefits, everything that comes along with it.
Absolutely. Marcia, I'm going to start this round with you and ask, you're in Hyde Park. And, you know, it's not that close to the waterfront. And of all four of us that are here, you probably have the #1 issue when it comes to access. However, there's a hidden jewel in the High Park sort of Mattapan area, which is, I believe, if I have it right, offshoot of the Neponset River.
Yes,
What's
yes,
that
you
water?
do.
So I did have it right. Okay.
Yes,
I've
you
been,
do have it right.
in
Yes.
the crew for a couple of years. You know, you learn some things. But there is a sort of hidden jewel there. It's not Seaport, but let's talk about that hidden jewel for those that are in Hyde Park. That can go walk over by there. I've been to events where they have canoeing there. Let's mention that, and then we'll I want to also ask you about the access point, because it's a little bit different with Hyde Park. In Roxbury, if I'm driving, I literally have found a way to get to Seaport in 10 minutes. Take the little throughway over by South Bay, and you're literally at Seaport in 10. Pastor Willie, you seem like you learned that shortcut too. And so Marcia, talk about the jewel in that area, and then talk about what suggestions you would have for folks that live in Hyde Park, Rosendale, deep in Mattapan.
For suggestions for
to take either advantage of the Neponset offshoot or how they do their best to try to take advantage of the access the crew and others are trying to create to get down, and not just Seaport. But what is 41? I don't want to get it wrong. What's the mileage? 141 or 40, 71 something miles of waterfront. So Marcia, I'll shut up. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, sure. So I always tell people that Hyde Park and starting actually in Norwood, Dedham, this river that runs all the way through Dorchester, the Neponset River. And I think people, they miss that. And Hyde Park, I say, has a river running through it. And the sad part about the river is that it's polluted along many of the waterways from, Hyde Park was a very industrial site with a lot of manufacturing places along it. So a lot of chemical waste got dumped in the water. So we're in the process of cleaning that up. As a matter of fact, last night, the EPA had a meeting in our community about the work to clean it up and to make it attractive. And I always laugh and joke. I'm thinking, if this waterway was in some place like Wesley or Brookline, we would not be having this conversation about using that really beautiful space. So the work is to make it more accessible. We have had some cleanups and some structural changes on some parts of the river where closest to where I live, last year we worked on creating a canoe activity for those who were a part of our Juneteenth celebration. And we'll keep doing that. But the work continues to expand access. There's a part off of the square where we really want to clean it up, take the brush back, and create a sort of a park by that area. So there's continued work. And what I would say is that Hyde Parkers, all of Boston, anybody who has means, to come alongside us to make sure that we have this beautiful space that we can use and showcase.
Absolutely. One point.
Yes.
I'm sorry. One clarifying question. Can we name the space? It's near the hat shell up there. I don't want to get it wrong.
Martini shell. The Martini shell.
The Martini shell.
Yes.
And you get there, I think, through what is that?
Truman Parkway. On Truman Parkway.
Truman Parkway. So straight up there, Asia, you'll see the hat shell on your right. And then if you're going towards the hat shell, it's almost sort of parallel. You walk straight a little bit to the right and you see the waterway over there. Marcia, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Finish your last point.
You're fine. You can also access the river in the part that we're trying to clean up. Several places along Mattapan, the back of Mattapan, the river shops at Riverwood. That shopping plaza has places where we're trying to create access points along the Fairmount commuter rail line. There's a back section of that you can also walk and look at. It's very polluted and very dirty, but that's the work that we're trying to do. So there are many access points that are still unexplored. But I would say for people wanting to be involved, yes, by all means, the EPA, there's Southwest CDC is doing some great work to help us have access. So, and neighborhood groups are doing the work as well. And I think your other part of your question was to talk about
suggestions for folks that are on like the outer outskirts, Rosendale, and Mattapan. What suggestion, in addition to the Neponset Riverway, what suggestions, a couple maybe, to the easiest way or the easiest access point for folks to get to some point of the mileage of Boston's waterfront?
Oh, so I mentioned again coming to Hyde Park to do that, and I think for me, when I want to access the waterfront itself, what we know as the waterfront, Boston waterfront, I really look forward to all the summer events that crew helps facilitate.
Yeah.
And I go there. I mean, the last one I went to was on the South Boston corridor, where we looked at the Carson Beach area and at a festival. But I tell people to go to the crew website, go to the Boston Harbor Now website. There are lots of things that you could do to be a part of what's happening in this very exciting space. So I hope that answers your question.
It did absolutely. And someone is saying, Val, behind Price Right, she must have saw my look when you mentioned the Riverwood shopping plaza. Reverend Bodrick, I want to start with you in this segment and ask. It's Black History Month, and you know, there's one side of the fact. I had Chief White Hammond on, and we were joking about the fact that she was going scuba diving. You know me and my wonderful self. I said, Mary, I'm going scuba diving in February. And she said, I'm in the climate, but at the end of the day, I'm Black. I'm not hitting the water in February. In that sort of, there is this perception about our relationship to the water. There's some truth, there's some facts about how we got here, generational trauma coming over here, but there's also history. We were great contributors to the economy early on. Boston, Tracy Lewis, who's a part of the coalition, talks about the deep Black history along the waterfront there. How do we correlate what we fight for, we celebrate our history, with our right to take advantage of accessing these waterways? However way you want to respond, good Reverend.
Well, I think it's a very nuanced question, and particularly in regards to our relationship to the water, right? You know, interesting the dynamics in which we talk about, you know, the fact that we are always encouraging people to get out on the water to learn how to swim. Like, this is something that we really do talk about across our country, and yet we have always been a marine people. And which is so interesting, right? Whether it's rice, indigo, and all of these different dynamics, whether it's been port labor work, this is not new to us as a community. In many ways, we've seen the shifts in economies change around us across, you know, the seaboards, but it's not a new dynamic. I think what the real conversation centers around is that, particularly in Massachusetts, there's always been this right to public access. This whole conversation is really centered around what is understood as Chapter 91. It's the Massachusetts Public Waterfront Act.
I learned about that on the Mystic Valley ride thing with crew this October. Yes, come.
Probably also me and Laila did a whole conversation with CLF, and we did a whole interview and conversation. We'll send you the video, Java, send it out, push it out. It's important. But I think a big part of what we're talking about is understanding what your rights are, right? And you can't defend what you don't know. And I think that's something that we've always learned as our people. You have to know what you have right to. Chapter 91 regulates activities both on the coastal and inland waterways. It includes construction and dredging and all those great things, but it's also the preservation of pedestrian access to the waterfront's edge, whether that's fishing, whether that's doing fouling, whether that's navigation. So when you come to TAC and you work with TAC, you get to see that we are intentional about making sure people understand what their rights are, knowing that these spaces have been protected, not just for those who are in certain areas, as Laila alluded to, but for everybody in the Commonwealth, particularly for those in Roxbury, Dorchester, and Mattapan. You know, when I think about this, we have to really start talking about, well, how did we get here in the first place? Like, how did the waterfront become so exclusive and so inaccessible to folks? Well, there's a few things that come to mind. First is population, right? It tells us a lot about what's happening in the Commonwealth. Then we have to recognize that outside of East Boston, you know, residential communities abutting the waterfront are majority white.
Yes, sir.
That's
right?
great.
You know, it's one of the reasons why people don't want to go to the seaport. One of the reasons why people don't want to go to these waterfront areas. When you look at like South Boston waterfront, you look at Seaport, pretty much you look at those examples, you're talking about 77% white environment populations, as opposed to pretty much 44% in the whole city of Boston. And then when you're talking about the wealth and the economic gap that's in that area, you're talking about, on average, the median income in those areas is $170,000 for whites. For whites in those areas, juxtaposed to about $76,000 writ large in the community writ large in Boston. When you narrow that down to Roxbury, we're talking about $23,000 for median income. So you see these disparities that have an impact on why certain people feel that that area belongs to them and is not accessible to others. And so here we are saying, well, all that sounds good, but here's the legal rights you have. And this right is given to you because you have that right as a citizen of this Commonwealth, and you deserve this right. And despite the economics, despite the racial demographics, this waterfront is yours as well.
That's right.
And so that's why the American City Coalition started this work in 2018. We were doing this with Bar Foundation back in 2018, doing this work about doing resident identified barriers and figuring out solutions to accessing Boston's waterfront. And here's what we found out, Jimmy. We found out there's a few things that have kept people from having access. One was familiarity.
Yeah.
People weren't familiar. We didn't know what was going on. Excuse my voice. We didn't know what was going on the waterfront. There wasn't enough advertising about programming on the waterfront. There wasn't enough, things that were letting people know what was happening. And so we began to do programming that was intentionally targeted to say, here, come to the waterfront. And Laila can do that program a little later. The other thing was people didn't know the area. Yeah. How do I navigate? Right when I get down to Seaport, where do I go?
If I can get there.
We'll get there. We'll get there. I got a list of things. How do I navigate? Language exclusion. There was no signage for multilingual language inclusion. When we talk about amenities, what was available and affordable for us, right? When we talk about the utilization, food, transportation, as I think we've been talking about the whole time, retail. Why would I come over here and shop if they ain't got stuff I really want? And then when you're thinking
or
about
can't afford in some cases.
Or can't afford in some cases. I don't want to pick nobody's pockets.
Exactly. In some cases, absolutely.
In some cases. But when we're talking about that, and then beyond the transportation being difficult, the distance that people were trying to travel, the parking is never really that great over there. You got to pay at least $20 to $40 just to park over there, right? We're gonna have a hard conversation. Let's have that conversation. Then people didn't feel welcome.
Yes, sir.
Belonging matters. When we're talking about Black history, we're saying we belong.
Yes, sir.
Matter. Belonging matters. People had prior experiences. And I think when we were talking a couple years ago in this conversation, I was very clear to say that the waterfront and the areas around there weren't welcoming the Black people historically. There were places, I remember the first time and people were saying, don't go to South Boston.
Yeah.
Just don't go. Pastor Jared, Pastor G, he was like, what you going over here for? And it was a concern, but it spoke to the fact that there was a lack of diversity.
Yes, sir.
That the public spaces did not feel inclusive, that they were exclusive, and that there was a history of trauma in relation to these spaces. And so we're going to really turn the tide in Black History Month. We're going to turn the tide through our programming.
Wait a minute, hold on. No pun intended. Turn the tide.
I was intentional. We're trying to shift the narrative, but we can't do that if we're not going to be transparent, truthful about what got us here in the first place. And that's the work that we're trying to do. And so, we've been doing programming since 2018 at the American City Coalition. When we've been working with Bar Foundation for the past 4 years. We've been working, and we are glad to see new partners come into this space with us because we were on a frontier trying to ring out to the other waterfront partners to the city saying, hey, this is an issue. This is something we need to do. We need to create access and utilization of Boston's waterfront for recreation, for culture, and employment, which is why we also tie our work at Roxbury Works into this work because we are intentional around making sure that folks in our neighborhood have access to meaningful, good jobs. And we've been focused on life science, biotech, which is very heavy on the waterfront.
Yes, sir.
Healthcare and blue-green tech. And that's how we are tying this all in. Recreation, programming, policy, culture, employment, opportunity. That's what we have to do. But we can't do this if we're not going to have an open, honest, transparent conversation around the barriers that have historically kept us from this. And then what work we're going to have to do to create real meaningful access so folks can really feel a personal investment and connection to the waterfront. And so I think Laila can talk about the programs that we're doing to do that at TAC. But I can tell you that what's deeply rooted in this is an understanding that we've had with community. This came out of us bringing over 450 people to the waterfront and bringing out over 800 people to a boat ride every year for the past 4 years. I mean, this is the work we've been doing, and we are excited to continue to do that. So if you want to be a part of that, you can go to tamcc.org.
Hold on, Rev. Type it in the private chat. Type it in the private chat, and I'm gonna put it right on screen.
I'll type it in the chat. But we want people to come to our programming. I think Laila can tell you about it because she's been doing an amazing job, and she's been a great addition to our team. But really talk about why these undercurrents and these pillars that we've built this programming on matters to actually pushing back against the racism that Black folks have experienced with the waterfront.
I got you, Rev. Y'all done got Rev. You're gonna talk about excuse my voice. We see why your voice is. We only 2 days out. Well, a few days out from Sunday, and you doing your good preaching. Laila, give us one example, because Reverend Bodrick and yourself and Marcia have really laid out the issue. And one of the things that we want to focus on is ideas and suggestions and how we remedy. Rev, we probably need to do a whole separate conversation on the legislative rights that come with this, because I'll take it to the word. My people perish for what? The lack of knowledge. And if you don't know, and then there's the old adage, knowing is half the battle. Laila, from that knowledge and from the battle, what's an example of some of the programming? I know that you all take the folks Roxbury the last couple of years. What's another example of programming that is sort of an obvious kickback to a lot of the barriers that you're aware of? And then Marcia, we're going to come back to you.
I think we really try and do that with all of our events and any programming that we put on, but I would highlight the Joy of Kayaking, which we do on Black Joy Day. So that's in like the first weekend in September.
That's right. In collaboration with one of the partners with Black Thaddeus. And okay.
Yes. Yes, exactly. With Thaddeus Miles and with all of our other wonderful waterfront partners as well, and Boston waterfront partners through the Bar Foundation as well. And that's one where, again, we're coordinating shuttles so that you can get picked up in Roxbury or Grove Hall and get brought to the location, where we're putting out information in Spanish, where we always have food. And that's an event where we have upwards of 400 people on that day, and even more in terms of registrants and just people that we got that concept out in front of. But I think one of the first pieces of feedback, and this speaks to the idea of really feeling welcome and wanting to see faces like you when you go to an event like this, one of the first pieces of feedback that I received was we were talking to a prior participant, and she said that she went there and she loved the event, but she wanted it to feel bigger. And in my head, I'm like, this is already one of our biggest events, but for her, 400 other people wasn't enough.
Wasn't big enough?
Because it's such a broad spread area that you're not necessarily always going to see them right in your space, because people are doing kayaking, people are doing sailing and dragon boat racing and touch tanks and things on the land as well. So for her, it was too spread out. She wanted more. She wanted to see more Blackness and more diversity and color in the area that we were taking over. So I think that really speaks to just wanting to feel represented. And of course, that goes beyond our event days as well, but especially on days when we're really trying to make the most of one moment.
I really appreciate a lot of what you've lined out for TAC, being a part of, I was going to say Brother Willie, Reverend Pastor Bishop, in the early foundational work, along with, Marcia as well as crew. And well, so Marcia, I'm going to come back to you and ask, what's an example of the programming? Cindy, to repeat, Black Joy Day is usually during my birthday weekend. Usually around September 6th, 7th, or 8th. Shout out to Uncle Thaddeus. He always makes sure I have a cake. But there's programming that goes on at the ICA. And then I remember last year about the opportunity for kayaking. It's a whole weekend thing. So it's usually the weekend after Labor Day. It usually falls about the weekend after Labor Day. Marcia, what's an example of some programming that you're doing in your area in conjunction with crew?
Sure. There's lots. I will say I want to shout out Ian and Anthony and Tracy and the work that they're doing to partner with West Fairmont Hill and the Forum for Racial Equity, both of which I head up, to really make sure that the waterfront's presence is felt in Hyde Park, but also that we have access. So one of the very first things they did.
Can I interrupt you? The waterfront's presence in Hyde Park.
Oh yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the fact that they have input. And they have, and Hyde Park has a voice in what happens in the waterfront. So one of the first things we did was to convene listening sessions in Hyde Park, with every demographic that we can think of: seniors, high schoolers, people of color, people of European descent, that would really ask, what do they want to see? And I believe that has had some impact into the programming in the crew work. But they also have started this amazing partnership with us for Juneteenth, where we really address the issue of health disparities. We are, by the way, in Hyde Park, working to build a health center. And as part of the centering of that conversation, I've been trying to find ways in which we partner with organizations. And so one thing they've done is to have us have wellness activities as the kickoff for our Juneteenth celebration. So in the last 3 years, we've had Zumba and yoga being a part of that. And then, of course, this year we'll add the canoeing on the Neponset River. And finally, thirdly, because there's one more thing. Thirdly, I think I've been hearing, I'm not intricately involved, but I'm aware of the activities that are underway with Hyde Park Main Streets to build an economic presence from Hyde Park on the waterfront. So, for example, Zaz, the restaurant.
Zaz is an example. Yep.
Shout out to is now on the waterfront. But also, I know of a couple of the businesses I can't really say are working to have a presence on the waterfront that are.
You sure you don't want to drop it on Java with you?
Yeah, sorry.
Can't. Okay, go ahead.
But the idea that we're trying to have ourselves be represented in that space is important. And the last thing I'll say is, we really try to be active in the ways in which crew and the waterfront are doing things in the area. So we've been to the events, I've shared the events. But yesterday I shared also a grant opportunity for neighborhoods to have events on the Arbor Islands if they wanted to. And so I would say that's one way for us to continue that connection, to create presence, is to use grants that Boston Harbor now already has, is offering for us to have events from the community in the islands and in the waterfront. So there are many opportunities.
We might need to talk to crew and okay, go ahead.
So those are the things.
Okay. All right. I just know I just heard grant. And there's some things we're doing with crew and whatnot, but as many things and events, activities that we can add. And thank you for naming that resource, Ian or someone. If there's a link to that grant resource, please put it in the comments. I got to thank Ian for always being sure that we have information. And Reverend Bodrick is in the background as well. I'm going to put this link in the comments to the resource that he referred to earlier. You can get all the information about TAC, but this is in the comments here. It is hyperlinks, and you can go directly there. We're going to get ready to wrap up our February episode of Waterfront Wednesdays, and I want to sort of center, as Reverend Broderick talked about, this is Black History Month. We know that we need to ensure that the history is there. Maybe I need to pull together a whole show with like a Reverend Mariama and a few other folks, that our history when it comes to water, specifically in the waterfront, there's a whole trail, and I can't remember, Ian or Anthony, if you can remember, Tracy referred to sort of this walk that highlights Black contribution to the waterfront and the economic ways. We just, in this moment of Black history and the waterfront, Reverend Broderick, I'm gonna let you end it out. Laila, I'm gonna let you start it off. What would you like to see 20 years from now when our young people talk about Black history in relation to the waterfront from the work we've been doing in the past? What does that history look like in 20 years, from 4 years ago up until 20 years from now, 24 years total? How do you want to see us describe history of Boston's waterfront?
I think being able to describe it, so that would mean knowing it, feeling empowered by it, and enrich in it, and recognizing both how far back it goes, but also feeling so present that like you can see where it's also going to go, in terms of knowing that we do have ownership, we do have the ability to enjoy this resource, even if we're not there. Because we're not always trying to push Roxbury residents to like leave Roxbury. We want as many of us in Roxbury as possible, but you should still feel able to enjoy all of Boston's waterfront. So I think it would be kind of that broad spectrum on both sides of feeling very rooted and very connected, regardless of how local you are.
Marcia, 24 years from now, your child, I'm gonna get you to say child or grandchild, is going to write an essay about the work of your work in the Waterfront Coalition. What's some of the points in that essay 24 years from now?
Well, can I give you a quick example of how I want to have it shift? So remember when smoking was normal, everybody just smoked and everywhere. Now we have ban against smoking, and so now you can't smoke. So if you were in a room with people and somebody lit a cigarette, you'd be like, "Wait a minute, are you crazy? That's not okay." What?
Yeah.
Right. So the study, the science, the laws have shifted the whole environment and the behavior and the narrative such that it is no longer normal for you to smoke in a room.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see 20 years from now for it not to be normal for us to be having this conversation about why we can't go to the waterfront. Mm-hmm. That it's normalized, that when we walk on the waterfront and we see people of color, it is, oh yeah, all right, yeah, that's normal. That's okay.
It's not even an O. Let's keep it 100. It's not even an O.
Yeah. I want to shift the narrative so it becomes normal. I don't want to have representation. Representation is, I want to have it normalized. It's so singular to be represented. I want to have normalization. That we're a part of that conversation. We're a part of the story. We're a part of the fabric of the city of Boston because we're a part of this country, and we should be a part of all of the places that it enjoys.
In the words of our good friend, who's a very avid supporter of the Waterfront Coalition, Brother Conan Harris, we belong everywhere.
Yes.
That is Conan's mantra. All right. So, friends, it's good to see you in the room. Reverend Bodrick, I'm going to pitch it like this intentionally. If you were to speak those things that are not as though they were, y'all see his in reference to the Waterfront Coalition. Come, sir. I'm about to put you on full screen. But 24 years from now, your son is in his probably then first year in graduate school. First year in graduate school. And he's writing about the history. What and speak it as if in the context of past. I want to hear you, sir. What does the waterfront look like 24 years from now, based on all the work that you all done, and speak it in the text, the content of the tense rather of looking back.
Yeah. As I was hearing my sisters speak about this and what they desire, the first thing that comes to my mind is the hymn of our ancestors, wade in the water, wade in the water. God's going to trouble the water. Mm-hmm. I think for me, that hymn reminds me of liberation and our deep connection to the water. And if my son was to write a book about waterfront access, I'd probably give him the title, God Has Troubled the Waters. Really speaking about the intentionality of folks like ourselves who, for the last 20 years, have been working to make sure that there's not just a Nia by Grace, but there are multiple restaurants out there, that folks feel that there is not only accessibility, but they feel not only a sense of belonging, but they know that they have actually changed this space so that their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren won't have this conversation, that they feel a sense of not only diversity, but they also sense that that this space has been built for me with intentionality. And I want them to be able to enjoy the waterfront, to be able to experience it, to not fear the waterfront or fear the area. I want them to be able to afford whatever they want over there because we've got folks into meaningful, good jobs. I want them to be able to go and move around and feel comfortable without any worries of prejudice against them. I want there to be a space where everybody feels as if they've lived up to what the law has said, that this is a public right. This is a public access. And so we want there to be multilingual and amenities that are built for all of us. I want it to be accessible for folks who may not be able-bodied, but they too can experience and enjoy the waterfront. So if my son was to write about this, I hope that we troubled the water so much that racism was drowned and the work of his ancestors liberated and created a new space, a new waterfront, a new place of enjoyment for the people in the city of Boston.
Yes.
Marcia, I saw you. He said one point, and I saw that hand stick up over the title goal.
Yeah, amen, amen, amen. You know, I'm a church girl. So Reverend Bodrick knows that I belonged to 12th Baptist Church before he got there, when Reverend Hayes was there. So I have this affinity to the body and to the leadership that he has now over this great community that I was a part of. So yes,
absolutely. And I love that natural love and affection that just happened. I really appreciate all three of you being here. Laila, I hope this was a good first experience in the Java Cafe. I'm sure with Marcia and Reverend Bodrick, you would agree. This one was different. This one was different. And I appreciate all three of you being here and bringing attention to this. It's organizations like this and others that move in the space of equity and whatnot that really, I think our business should be to go out of business. That is the ultimate goal. We want to go out of business. This shouldn't be a career. This coalition, 5-10 years from now, before the book is Reverend Bodrick. Now I need you to remember that when you're the second, when is it Willie the third?
It's the third.
Yeah. When he writes the book, we're going to be able to go back in the digital archives and say, cast here. No, I'm messing. But no, I really appreciate all three of you for being here. We're going to come back again in April for our Waterfront Wednesday, sponsored by the Coalition for a Resilient and Inclusive Waterfront. Please keep your eyes and attention to the website, which is Boston. Oh, they're going to get me. Actually, I got the notes right here. Hold on. You want to keep access and attention to the Boston Waterfront Coalition website. Here it is. I'm about to put it in the comments right now, so you all can go and I don't get in trouble. Where is it? Okay, here we go.
It's in the chat.
It's in the briefing document, Marcia. Hold on. All right. I got it. Thank you, Ian. I was about to put it in there. Thank you, Ian. This is the website that you want to go to stay up to date with information about the Waterfront Coalition. A few moments ago, I put an active website. Marcia, can you is there a website for your work as well? Can you put that in the private chat?
In the chat? West Fairmont Hill, West FH Community, Ian, westfhcommunity.org.
Okay.
And would you mind, Jimmy, if I just mentioned that we want people to come to our June 15th Juneteenth celebration, as well as
I just seen it, Val Brown. I was going to post that as well.
That's one of my neighbors. Yes.
Save the date, June 15th, Hyde Park Juneteenth celebration. So please keep that in mind as well.
One more thing to join us in our work for the health center. That's it.
Oh, please listen. Where's the website? And folks can go to the website.
It's also on that same website. So you'll see there's a bunch of.
And you type it in the private chat, and I'll put it right there in the comments.
Oh, I think he just. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, it's that one's for you. Oh, Ian got it. There it goes. Okay, yes, West Fairmont. So all three websites rather. West Fairmont to find out about June 15th and the work they're doing toward the health center, and also to stay up to date with the Boston Waterfront Coalition. This is the website. It's hyperlinked in the comments, and then also to get information about TAC and everything that they're doing. This is the website here. And so again, I appreciate all three of you being here. I'm actually invigorated by today's conversation. I might actually get up and clean up a little bit. I don't know if I'm that invigorated. No, but come back on April for our Waterfront Wednesdays, the second Wednesday in April. My guest, I'm going to let you all go so I can go pay some bills. And we'll see each other very, very soon.
Well,
Thank
Jimmy,
you.
keep doing
Yes.
your work. We appreciate you and appreciate the platform that you've created.
Yes.
It's empowering to our community. It's uplifting, and we want to continue to pour into you as you poured into so many others. So we're thankful for you and all that you do, and we want to invite anybody to be at all the various events that we're doing each month: June, July, August, and September on the waterfront. So please come out and join the American City Coalition. Thank you, Jimmy.
Yes. Thank you all.
Absolutely. Rev, you know, in another role, I heard you say keep pouring. Are you going to continue to keep pouring into, I'll just say December of 2020. Reverend Bodrick was one of the first ones in another coalition to support this platform. So I appreciate it, brother. Thank you. You were a contributor to making sure that we're coming up on this 4 years in about 3 weeks. So we'll get you all that information. Thank you all so much. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Listen, folks, we've had a lot of Waterfront Coalition Wednesdays, Waterfront Wednesdays the past year and a half or so. And that one, not to take away from any other ones, but this one was different. And so please join us for the second Sunday in I'm so used to saying Sundays. The second Wednesday in April, the Waterfront Coalition will be back with us. By that time, we'll have some updates about the Waterfront Wellness Week that is sponsored by the Coalition for Resilient Inclusive Waterfront. Thank all of you for being there today. Listen, talking about health and wellness, I wanted to let everyone know that this evening at 6 p.m., through a partnership with Vital Connections, I am sponsoring a community convo. Java with Jimmy is going to sponsor tonight's community convo that happens monthly by Vital Connections. However, we're partnering together for Black History Month. We're going to partner around a few other things soon. But we're partnering together around Black History Month. And we're going to let's talk about restoring trust in healthcare, a discussion about our history, healthcare, and building bridges for a healthy future. We have a Dr. Clark, I believe, from Brigham and Women's Hospital, Dr. Joseph Betancourt, who is a staple for the Your Healthy Java part of this platform, will be with us. I should have my briefing in front. I'm really going to have to start having a piece of paper in front of me for every show so I don't mess up. But come back this evening at 6 p.m. We are going to partner with Vital Connections. It is going to be on all social media platforms, and we're going to have a real conversation about restoring the trust in healthcare. We're going to set some context that it's not just micro, but it's also systems and structures, and how do we begin to change it or continue to change it. Also want to let you know that tomorrow morning, got to take the picture out live here in my home studio. Sheena Collier and Dart Adams are going to join me to close out Black History Month. Now, I'll be honest with you. I invited Sheena for early part of the month. She said, hey, how about we close out on the 29th? Just an idea. So I don't know what she's coming with. Dart, you know, they both come with energy. Last year, we had the opportunity to have an in-person event with Dart and Sheena titled Black Boston Then and Now. Tomorrow, we're going to talk more about now. There will be some context of then because we have to figure out how we got here. Dart was very active in the Murder in Boston documentary. Sheena is continuing to build Boston While Black and going into spaces. And so I encourage y'all tomorrow, those of you that can't, the after watch is, I appreciate everybody that goes to the after watch, but there's nothing like being here live. Y'all try to work from home tomorrow to be right and ethical. Take a couple of hours off. Your PTO. Yes, I'm asking y'all to use PTO to be here tomorrow. I'm messing. But be here with Dart, Sheena, and I tomorrow morning. And then on Friday, continuing that same energy, we will be joined by Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, who is our congressional representative here for the Massachusetts 7th District. She is kicking off Women's History Month, coming off the heels of Black History Month, coming off the heels of Dart and Sheena. I'll just leave that right there. Okay. Next week, we're going to have more conversations about Women's History Month and talking with some women. I am in the process of trying to connect with some of our elder women here in the city to ensure that their legacy, that I'm able in my way to document their legacy and speak with them. So stay tuned for that in March. Also, flyers and Eventbrite are coming. I talked with the team the past couple of days. The anniversary of March 21st through 23rd, March 21st at GBH at 12 noon. If you're not able to make it, this one I'm asking people to try to come at 12 noon. All right. Try to get there at 12 noon on the 21st. Come be in the studio with me and celebrate 4 years. I'm going to be interviewed about the last 4 years. And then part of that, we're giving the rest of the I'm giving the rest of the show to the team. And I don't know anything that they're doing for that last half hour. So I'm probably going to have some tissue. On February 22nd, there is a VIP private walkthrough. We are the studio location over at 135 Morsi Boulevard. My understanding is I'll be able to do my first podcast from there in June. And so some of the supporters and partners of Java with Jimmy, we're gathering them together for that event. And then in the evening, we're having the Red Cup Awards. We've done them for the past 2 years. We're adding an award this year. And I just started notifying the awardees. And so we'll make public the awardees probably the early part of next week. And then on the 23rd, all the percolators. Estella's 49 Temple Place, 3 to 8 p.m. There is a cost for the day party. When the link goes up, get your ticket then. The early bird tickets will be going up very soon. Once the early bird tickets are gone, regular price. Don't text me. Don't inbox me. Everything is through Eventbrite. I almost said something else. Everything is through Eventbrite. All right. So register there. The team is working on getting stuff together there and the links and whatnot. And so the main places I would like folks to really come would be the 21st at GBH, if you can make it. I know it's 12 noon during the day. The Red Cup Awards on Friday, the 22nd. And then percolators make it to Estella's. Right. That's it for me this morning. Let me just check the last couple of comments. Pam, who is back, everybody. I need to get her on. Pam, we need to do some sort of check-in about your trip and whatnot. So I know, Pam. Auntie Java said it a couple of weeks ago. I need to get an itinerary out. Thank you. Oh, goodness. All right. Eat and nap. You have an amazing day on two, Lasagna. On two. You too, Lasagna, on purpose. Miss Teresa, oh man, getting my knees old in the morning. Miss Teresa, I'm not messing with you. March 22nd is the Red Cup Awards. The walkthrough is invitation just because we're going into a construction area, hard hats and all that other stuff. And so what I did was to keep that limited. Those that the major corporate sponsors will do that. And then we'll have our first podcast over there in June. I'm actually going to spend time in office over there tomorrow. So yeah, I'm shout out to Brother Ross Marshall and Bio University. Shout out to Beacon Properties at Southline. Shout out to Portal Innovations, John Flavin, Kevin, and the team, Brian over there, that are ensuring that when we enter into that space in June, that we're going to feel welcome. And so yeah, a lot's happening in June. A lot's happening in March. Also, March 19th, Tuesday night, we're going live from Boston College School of Nursing to talk about men's health and equity with Dr. Rick Lee, also Brother Keith Maskow. So, yeah, March and June. Y'all pray my strength. We're getting out of here. Auntie Java is in the room. Someone just, Auntie affirmed your piece about the itinerary and calendar. And it was Pam, actually. Auntie Java is saying, thank God for traveling mercies. Pam's return, shoreside, absolutely. Miss Teresa says she turns 40 plus 10 in June. Thank all of you for being here today. Pam said, whatever. I'm getting off of here, everyone. Don't forget to join us this evening at 6 p.m. for our conversation about restoring trust in healthcare. I am excited to have my first public-facing collaboration with Vital Connections. There's a few things that I'm going to work on together toward health equity. So thank all of you for being here this morning. Thank my guest. Shout out to crew. Don't forget, we're back here the second Wednesday in April, and we will see everyone Tonight, somebody say tonight, turn to your neighbor and say tonight, Java with Jimmy Live, restoring trust back in our healthcare system in partnership with Vital Connections. We'll see you tonight at 6 p.m. Peace, everybody.